Hello and welcome to Game Changing with me, Tim Thornton.
And me, Chris Sheldon.
In this podcast, we chat to various luminaries from the music world who we've met along the way.
About those key moments in their careers where the stars aligned and it all started to go right.
It's not an exaggeration to say that Flood is one of the best and most sought-after record producers in the world. In the 1980s, he engineered landmark records by the likes of U2 and Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, before going on to produce some of the alternative rock scene's key albums, including Violator by Depeche Mode, The Downward Spiral by Nine Inch Nails, and Let England Shake by PJ Harvey. He's also produced the last two albums by the band I drum for, Fink. But one thing Flood loves to do is talk. We sat down with him over the summer 2019 and asked him about his career, how he got his breaks, how he remained cutting edge, and most importantly, how he got his nickname. But we also let the conversation take us in whatever direction it chose, so we very much hope you enjoy listening. I was thinking about someone the other day, Pete Wiley, you know him very well, don't you?
I did Sinful years ago.
Right.
I did The Mighty War.
Before that, no.
Yes.
Right, wow. Yeah,
He was actually one of the funny. He was a hoot to work
Right.
Oh, absolutely.
He's an
was a
incredible
Start
songwriter.
talking. Yeah.
with. Yeah.
Like, I mean, I've been... Six Music occasionally play things that I've never heard of his from the last sort of 20 years, and it's incredible.
He's still
stuff.
going.
Yeah.
He's a naturally gifted songwriter.
Yeah,
That's the thing.
yeah,
You can
for
just
sure.
bang him out.
But also doesn't quite know when to stop.
No. No, that's right.
What? Stop
Anything.
Yeah,
Oh, really?
72
Okay.
track, anyone? So should I ask you a couple of questions?
Far away.
Just a little bit of background. Where did you start?
Ironically enough, I started about 100 yards away from where we're sitting in Willesden in 1978. I was a suburban child from Bromley and just completely flunked all my A-levels, and my mum said, "Well, what are you going to do now?" And I went, "Oh, I don't know." She said, "Well, you like that sort of recording stuff, don't you? Get international musician." And there's about a bazillion adverts in the back. Phone them up, I'll give you a hand. So I phoned up about 50 places, get put through to the kitchens, get put through to the garage, and Morgan Studios, which was then, were interviewing for T-Boys. So I came up, and 3 days later, there I was working. Ostracised from home, school, just about everywhere else. But the first week was The Cure, Jack Bruce, a band called Money, who fed into Black Sabbath, who were around the corner. That was the first week.
Fantastic. So how old were you when you started?
18 and 1 week.
Yeah, so it's very similar.
Wow,
to
so
how
that's
I did.
79 kind of thing.
78.
78.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I was 4 years later. So you started here. You were obviously started at T-pop.
T-Boy.
T-Boy, of course. Yes,
I
no,
had
of
to
course,
look after
of
the
course.
dogs,
No, too
wash
right.
the boss's car,
Start
and
as a T-boy.
got my name.
Oh, yes, of course.
For the sake of anybody who doesn't know,
I wet myself. No, sorry. No, there was a session. It was Japan, actually. And the producer was Ray somebody or other, and the engineer was Chris Tangarides. And they came in at 3 o'clock in the morning. They'd been on tour. And myself and the other intern, T-Boy, were both called Mark. And we were both put on the session. And the studio, everybody had to have a nickname. Everybody. So I got put on this session, and it's about 3 weeks after I'd started. And I was terrified that I was going to fall asleep and lose my job. So I'd be sitting at the back of the room, and they'd all be working away. So I'd start to, the head to go. And then I'd be going, "Oh, does anyone want a cup of tea?" Jump up, run around, and go, "Oh, yeah, brilliant, nice one." Go over there, make the tea, wander back, do it there, and then sit at the back of the room. And their head would go, "Anybody want a cup of tea?" And this went on all night. And the other guy fell asleep. So he was a draught of tea, I was a flood of tea.
there we go.
Fantastic. So you took it with you?
Yeah, well, there was one point when I changed to Marcus Studios, and the guy said, "What do you want to be called?"
Right.
And Mark Ellis.
Yeah.
It's not really a cutting edge sort of. Well, at that time,
Flood is like you remember it. I mean,
well, that's right.
for sure.
And then I
Yeah.
just went, well, maybe subconsciously I do want to break free from everything.
Right.
So
Just that,
trust me,
that
with
kind of-
Bono, Edge, Flood.
Right.
There was one Eno. It just get okay. Anybody with a real name around here?
Yeah.
So you were at Morgan, is that right?
Yeah, Morgan. 5 studios, 4 here in Willesden, one in Brussels. But it was like an amazing learning.
Or did you get a T-boy to tape up the usual process, would you say?
Yeah, I was at Morgan for, well, I think 2.5 years. Officially, I was a T-boy for 18 months. Then I was a tape op. But at the weekends, I had to sit on reception and do security.
Right.
So that was like 48 hours. So you get your mates in. So I actually engineered the Associates,
Okay.
and produced on one of those particular evenings.
So I was going to ask you this because I was looking back at your sort of the semi list that is available. I mean, it's like you never know the full thing. And it seemed quite interesting that you went from assistant to producer for a couple of times. And obviously, I know this is a very tenuous element.
Yeah.
Production can be, as I remember saying to you once, production can just be keeping the band sober and in one place. And it can also be writing the choruses for you.
Yes, exactly,
it's
but
a
not
fair-
writing them.
Well, and then saying nice work when they've done.
Exactly.
Because it's a very eclectic, I think, is the word to describe you. And it seemed that you went, there's the early electronica stuff. I thought you'd done Nights of Ebb prior to U2, but not.
They did their first album with the guys at PWL, Phil Harding. And then I mixed a 12-inch, which must have been 85.
Yeah. You were doing some early production work, and there was a guy, Stephen Eber?
Oh, Stefan Emmer.
Yes.
And he was being produced by Mike Dempsey, who was the bass player in The Cure for the first album, which is the first credit I ever got on Three Imaginary Boys. There's a tiny little flood. And then he joined the Associates, and both The Cure and the Associates were on Fiction, which was over the road.
Right. Because you did a lot of work for Fiction, didn't you?
Yeah.
You were kind of in-house
they were
Mute.
Yeah. Well, Mute came afterwards. I was working with Soft Cell, because at Trident, their version of Fiction at Morgan was Some Bizarre.
Right.
So there was like fetus on your breath under your wheels. Sorry, that's not the PC.
Various fetuses.
Yes, exactly. And Daniel was over at Marcus with Mute, and Nick Cave had been talking to Mark Armand, going, "Is there anybody you fancy working with?" And to his internal credit, he said, "Oh, Flood's quite good." So I went to meet Daniel, and then I think the first 100 albums off Mute, I've got some involvement with 70 of them.
Wow. Okay.
Wow.
I mean, we till 95. I was pretty much living there.
Wow.
Amazing.
And so his roster was like unbelievable.
Who, Daniel?
Daniel, yeah.
Was he the normal originally?
Oh, yeah.
In the late 70s, yeah.
And Silicon Teens.
Yeah, I remember, because I remember
Warm Leatherette.
Warm Leatherette.
Oh,
yeah.
one of the genius songs.
Yeah.
Grace
Yeah,
Jones's version. Sorry, Daniel. So that fed the eclecticism. When I grew up, first gig I ever went to see was Tangerine Dream. The first single I ever bought was Gary Glitter. The first album I ever bought was The Beatles.
Right.
So it's a collision all the way along, and I'm a punk that lived it, and
Where were you from? Bromley.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Bromley. All
So that was the heart of
it's
the
just
outskirts of
boring. There was nothing to do.
No wonder. No wonder the
God.
banshees happened. So, what do you think then? Because this is the thing that always interests me. Obviously, you know, people become very successful and well known, and everybody have started scratching around like they do. But there's always a moment when you do something, and it's not normally by design,
Yeah,
where you'll produce a record or you'll be given the role of production or whatever it might be, and it just clicks. It happens.
yeah.
And people listen to it and go, the kid's got something, you know, and the phone rings,
Yeah,
and it might not necessarily be, you know, a million seller, but it's that thing. And what do you think for you? Do you think that there was a moment like that? Do you think there was?
Yeah, there were two things. One was very calculated
By you or by
Yeah.
the group?
by me. I think the major difference between now and then was the length of time that you did the job for. So I went and did Joshua Tree when I was 26. So that means I've been doing in studios for
8 years or so.
Yeah. You know, just sitting here doing the jingles, doing the Swedish heavy metal bands at midnight, or, you know, just paying your dues. And so you would get given the production credit if you were the engineer who had the happy smiling face and wasn't letting the band kill themselves, or occasionally made a, you know, a comment, oh yeah, that's quite good. Well, give him production, but we won't give him any money. And you slowly came up that way. And so I'd been working with Erasure, and I'd done their first album, and it was brilliant synthy pop.
Yeah.
Did you know Vince from Depeche Mode, or was this just...
No, this was basically Daniel had Erasure, Depeche, Yazoo, Renegade Soundwave, Ad N2X, The Normal, electronic side. Nick Cave, Diamanda Galas, Crime and Disease Solution, and we both happen to be similar tastes. I love synths, always have, because there's no keyboards, and I can just it's what comes out of my head.
Right.
And he loved that, but he also loved, you know, organic music, whatever you want to call it. So he would be one of the people that I would learn with the synths all the time, and he would come in and sit and watch while we were engineering, like Nick Cave's first record. You know, he just came down and I was going, oh, is it all right, Daniel? You know, being left alone. He goes, oh, sounds amazing. And then we'd go and do I Start Counting, or Fortran 5, like really obscure, or Frank Tovey, and he would spend hours on a synth.
Modular synths we're talking about.
Yeah. And it was just the perfect place to learn. So I was working with Erasure, done their first album, did the track that became Sometimes, and they went away to write the rest of the second album. I got a call to go over to work with U2, which came out of nowhere. I thought it was like somebody was taking the piss.
Right.
Totally taking the piss. So
Which album was this?
Joshua Tree. And what was that? What happened? It was around Easter, and somebody said, there's a bloke called Bono. He keeps on phoning up. He wants to speak to you. I go, oh, for goodness sakes. Oh, well, I'm doing high energy music at the same time, like really paying my dues. So this went on for about 3 weeks. Like, friends' mothers would go, this bloke called Bono's phoned up looking for you. So I'm going, who's having the wind up? And it's getting closer to April Fools. And I was sat in the studio, and the phone rings, and the receptionist goes, yeah, it's Bono on the phone for you. I go, brilliant. Hello, Bono. Oh, hello, Flood. Come on, who is it? Come on, don't waste my time anymore. Come on, you stupid wanker. No, it really is Bono. What? Yeah. it's really Bono. Oh my God. So, went over, did an audio interview, liked it, went and did the album. And it got to about 3/4 of the way through engineering it. And Erasure, their track Sometimes, was number 2 in the charts.
Was this the version that you'd done?
Yeah. We'd done the single, gone off. I was going to do U2. They were going to write. It would all finish around the same time. Whoopie-doo, of course, 6 months after it was supposed to. And I was sat there and they were phoning me up going, you're going to have to make a decision. You're either going to finish Joshua Tree, like recording and mixing it, as the engineer, not as the producer, or come over and finish our album as the producer.
Right.
And the engineer and knob twiddler. So, boy, that's a
tricky,
pretty difficult thing.
Yeah.
So I asked a lot of people, and somebody said to me, you're not really going to get any bigger as an engineer than the gig you're doing now. So do you want to be an engineer for the rest of your life? Or do you want to take a chance? And maybe you won't be as good, but you can always fall back on the engineering. So after much deliberation, I went, sorry, you two, not going to finish your record. I'm buggering off. I'm going to do a load of synthy pop.
So you didn't finish the
No, I finished the recording, and
recording.
then they mixed it with somebody else.
So what do you think led to Bono wanting to get hold of you, or the U2 camp? What do you think it was that you'd done that?
Virgin Prunes, Nick Cave.
Right. Well, Virgin Prunes, that's Gavin Dudo's mate, isn't it?
That was the first freelance gig I ever did.
And the Nick Cave stuff back then, I mean, it was still more birthday party, wasn't it, than what it became?
It most definitely was.
There's a song on the Joshua Tree that's mega Nick Cave.
Exit.
Yeah. I mean, if you listen to the From Her to Eternity,
totally,
and then listen to Exit, it's just like, you've been listening to this.
Yeah.
Well, what had happened was Gavin had been sort of said by Bono, do you know anybody who's doing anything sort of a bit edgy, engineering-wise? He said, wow, there's this bloke, let me play you a few things. And we just finished doing the second album, what's it called? Firstborn is Dead.
Right.
And
so this is Gavin from the Virgin Prunes.
Who's best mates with Bono.
Yeah.
And he said, have a listen to this cover version of a Dylan song, Wanted Man, which was a hell to do. Oh my God. It's like an 18-hour mix with like everybody flapping around the desk. And then Daniel going, can we just do another version of it? And I'm going, there is no way anybody's going to do
this is it.
Yeah, this is it. And he heard it, and Bono really loved it.
Yeah.
There's an energy about it. And he said, so who did that? And Gavin said, well, this guy that I work with. So that's...
Okay. So it had nothing to do with Eno or...
No. I'd never met Eno.
Daniel Anwar did that album, did Tree as well. So did you have to sort of do an interview with them? Or
I basically was given a studio with the band for a week, and they said, do anything you want. Then Daniel came in, and and then he started to sort of have a listen to what I was doing and how did you work, and they worked totally different to anything I'd done before. Like mics on the back couch, monitors in the studio. Oh no, that doesn't feel right. Oh, let's just move on to something else. Let's just all move around the room. Actually, no, I'm bored with that. Let's just do a bit of singing on this other side. And I'm going... The rule book, I'd started to sort of like the bottom of the intro, like tear a tiny little bit out of page 1. I arrived on Joshua Tree and I was put straight in the middle of the book. The book was turned inside out, chucked back at me and told me to go away and translate it into Japanese. So
fully at the deep end.
Absolutely. We're recording in a house. And you want to move to that studio, that guy's house, and you want to be ready to record in 24 hours. Okay.
On wedges. Or
Right.
It was a full
yeah.
mobile recording studio.
Right.
Okay.
And me and Joe Hurley, we got it down 24 hours. We could do it. And we'd go, right, come on then, we're ready.
But this is the band. Is this the band's call, or is this?
It was a collective because Daniel and Brian had worked with U2 on Unforgettable Fire.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they'd broken the U2 mould.
Okay.
And Dan had started off as the engineer, as one person in the band described his sound as being slightly not in focus,
Right.
but his musicality is amazing.
He's an amazing musician.
Right.
Absolutely unbelievable.
Yeah.
So he rapidly went into producing. So Joshua Tree, we need an engineer. And I think there was a feeling that they wanted a personality, but they also wanted sort of, not professionalism, but they wanted to make sure that they knew what was going on here, because it could go anywhere over there. Eno had a reputation as being, he'll eat you alive, because you won't understand what planet he's on.
Okay.
Daniel was on everybody's case from a professionalism point of view. You know, what the fuck are you doing? You're supposed to be recording with noise reduction on. What are those funny little lights for? Oh no!
Right.
So, one way of looking at it was he was pretty hardcore. He was obviously stressed and nervous, but it worked. But he was always very tense. Brian, it's just made me laugh from day one.
Right.
We just used to die laughing. So he'd sit in the studio, like say Street, the version had been recorded and loads of palaver had gone on, and no, it's not right. And I can remember one day, Brian walk into the control and go, how's it going? They out there recording? Yeah. They got everything sorted? Yeah, great. I could just turn the volume down. He'd set his desk up and be sitting there. I go, Brian, don't you want to be listening? He goes, no. Brian, surely there's something. No, I don't. They'll just do the reggae version, the slightly heavy metal version. They'll change key a few times. They'll make it go a bit slower.
That's great.
And then they'll go, we really like the other version. There's something about it. Yes, there is. The snare drum is perfectly in tune with the guitar, and he's never going to play the guitar like that. And it's just the most amazing piece of music, so leave it alone. I don't want to hear that. And you just go, genius. You get that?
Yeah. Just let them go through the motions.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, it's so funny.
That's brilliant.
But he's that combination of absolute professionalism, musicality, that coupled with the quintessential English eccentric, who I perfectly understood. He's not like him at all. Brilliant.
Yeah, and interesting. And you were just sort of the glue holding
totally.
it together, really.
Totally. So you became incredibly creative. There was the drums on the big one that sounds like Led Zeppelin, but it doesn't.
Bullet the Blue Sky.
That's it. So that backing track was cut in a room about half the size of this. Full band, Eno and Landwire all shaking bits of equipment like that. You know, literally the bass is there and the drums are there.
Yeah.
And the tech guy, the main tour manager, sound guy Joe, came in after the track had been cut, and I've been trying to get any form of like ambience or anything. I was going, that sounds a bit naff. Oh, help. And they all went off into the green room to have some food. And Joe said, we just got the lines working to the rehearsal room around the corner. So they plumbed these lines in literally 250 yards around the corner. A massive room, twice the size of this, with a full PA and a couple of microphones. And I went, thank you very much. So they went and had some tea. I went and had some fun. And they came back and went, but they still wanted to record it.
So you just send the whole track through it?
No, just the drums.
Just the drums.
Oh, right.
And then we worked out, the bong on the snare was in tune with the bass. And we were all going,
Perfect.
and the band come in and go, nah!
Perfect.
That
And then-
bong on the snare is amazing. Just to skip forward, there's a great bong on the snare on the fly as well.
That's a different type of bond. That's a very calculated bond.
That's a T-shirt right there with calculated bong.
Yeah,
I like that. Yeah. I've always loved the drum sound on U2 records because it's always that weird small but big thing, and it's obviously the way Larry plays as well because he's a tremendous player.
Oh, amazing player.
And they're always quite mono. They're always quite sort of small, but it's just it sits there and dominates the track in this kind of weird, understated way. I love it.
Well, from Joshua Tree, I realised I hated stereo drums. So, again, Dan Lanois, okay, yeah, you're working with you too. Right, let's put out 70 million drum mics,
Yeah,
which has
yeah.
never been my style, but like,
Right.
brilliant. And he went, no, 4 tracks for drums. I
Right.
might give you 5 on Wednesdays. but, no, that's it.
I just recently did some stuff, the Rocket Man soundtrack.
Oh, you did that. Brilliant. I love that.
Well, we're doing the recording, which was
Well done.
the best part about it. Well, it was
I know.
it was old school recording. It was like everyone playing together, piano, bass, drums, guitar, everybody. But what was interesting was we could listen to the original multi-tracks, the Elton one. It was bass drum, kit,
Yeah.
and that was it. Probably all done at Morgan, who knows? But fascinating. It's
Yeah.
really fascinating, and just sounded great.
Yeah.
I mean, probably by then it was 8 tracks and
Yeah.
great. But yeah, just kick drum and kit.
Wow.
Yeah, because
I love
I was
that.
taught basically the snare mic added depth to the overheads,
Yeah.
and the kick drum that's adding definition to the bass.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because a lot of those records, particularly in the 70s and the 60s, the bass was so prominent on a lot
Yeah.
of those things. It was so there, and the kick drum was just this sort of
Yeah,
in the background.
You just gave it a
it
little
was,
bit
it
of
was just like going on. But then bass was so much more fluid back then because there was no sustain. So you got to keep moving. Hence
Yeah.
you have it. I mean, was this the other day? Everlasting Love. The bass line on that
Yeah.
track is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
But it's an old-fashioned rhythm section as well. Like
Yeah.
the kick drum would work with the bass,
Yeah.
and the kick drum might lead, snare might hold back, and the
Yeah.
hi hat.
But they're quite old-fashioned. You too, in that sense, the
Oh,
rhythm
definitely.
section,
Definitely.
because they're pretty locked, aren't they?
Yeah.
Those
Well, Adam is the glue.
yes,
Like what we were
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
about
Yeah,
earlier
yeah,
on.
yeah.
You know, it needs something to go boom, 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 boom. But his feel against Larry, he's an individual with Edge and Bono.
yeah,
You've got to have somebody who's just like holding it down.
yeah.
But their feel together when they play the last verse of The Fly, just amazing groove.
Yeah. So, just slightly going back on track, as much as it pains me. So you left U2 and went to the recording of it and decided, right, I'm going to produce
Yeah.
Erasure. Yeah.
I mean,
And,
it's a big album, though. To be fair, it wasn't like a damp squid.
Well, the first album hadn't done that much.
no, true. But the second one had the Victim of Love, right? And
Yeah,
sometimes,
yeah.
Which is still fucking great. I
Yeah,
love
yeah.
that song.
Yeah.
So much. It's just that little keyboard part that leads into the chorus. That
Oh, yeah.
little
Yeah, yeah.
arpeggio just fades up into it. I love that.
God, days of my life.
Do you think that when you made that, did you consciously go for the throat as far as we're going to make this a hit record? As when we were talking the other day,
Yeah.
it's intense is the word I would put above your head for music. Not as a person.
Yeah, no,
but for the
yeah.
music. But Erasure is not particularly.
No.
And Vince, I know, he's a very clever guy and he knows what he's doing. But did you do it knowingly, going for
No.
a pop record?
There's a side of me that's the kid that listened to Bowie, listened to Bolan, listened to pop music. Even though I might rail against the Beatles, I listen to a lot of Beatles, and I love a song.
Yeah.
So it's not conscious, but it seems such a waste of time to make great art that may be even greater if it had something that people could obviously connect with. And a song is still the best way. So never ever have I gone in and gone, right, we're going to make a hit.
Yeah.
Ever. I couldn't do that. But if it doesn't appeal to the bloke from Bomney, as I sometimes say, then I'm not interested.
Melody, I mean, is that like a big thing?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, huge. And it could be a drum riff, it could be one lyric, it could be anything, but something that stands out. That's what pop music is.
The thing that I always, if I'm working with a group, I'm saying, well, why don't we do this? And then I'm like, there's always the naysayers who sort of worry that it's going a bit left field or whatever. And you go, Rock On by David Essex.
Oh, genius.
Right.
Ripped it off so... Oh, sorry.
Long before most of the bands that I worked with time, and what was it, 73? I go, listen to that. This was a massive hit.
Oh, totally.
His first single, his breakout single. And it's the most fucked up thing you'll ever hear. It's genius.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely.
You know, who knows where the one is? It's like there's delay, so much delay on the bass. There's some random tape delay.
I know. It's
wonderful. And the production it's brilliant. And it was a massive hit.
Yeah.
Because it just connected with people.
Yeah.
Because it was different. And it was... People connected. Like, everybody tries to make things perfect in computers. That's not what people connect with.
I totally agree.
They connect with the imperfections. Because they're human.
That's the sex of the music.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Well, there's nothing sexy about a computer. Well, interestingly, along those lines, Polly Harvey, To Bring You My Love, that was another record that really changed everything about the way I thought about things. She arrived with 4-track cassette demos, and they were amazing. But in my mind, they were demos. So I constantly go, come on, Paul, let's record them nicely and all this. And she goes, no, it sounds such a facade. I'm like an actor. I hate it. So I was thinking, how are we going to get around this? Because the perception is they're the cassette, you can't do that. You can't be doing that. So I put the 4-track demos onto the multi-track, and some songs we embellished, some songs we worked in tandem with, and other ones we just used it as a guide. And I'd say on that album there's probably 6 tracks that are still the lead vocals from the cassette, including,
that's great.
And you don't realise it because you don't know it. You think it's been done in a studio and it's had all this money.
Yeah, the perception is it's just a record.
Yeah. So, my favourite microphone, which is about 150 quid, and I'd say 90% of all people I've worked with, I've used them singing in the control room.
What do you use?
Shure SM Beta 57.
Oh yeah, great. Yeah.
Just
The
because
Beta,
it means people are relaxed.
I mean, there's something about being in a vocal booth in front of a incredibly expensive mic. I mean, that brings its own magic as well in some ways. People sometimes rise to that and they think, wow, this is incredible. But there's something kind of if you're looking for a kind of sincere off the cuff moment, and I remember recording with Flood was quite often Finn would be playing the song while we were setting up, and so we'd all be setting up, Finn would just be playing it and singing it a little bit sort of unthinkingly, and then Flood would come in and go, exactly like that, that's exactly how I want you to do it. And then for the next couple of hours we'd try and get the song
exactly like that,
and he'd be like, it's still not as good as when I first walked in. He'd like, God,
it is that thing of putting people at ease though. That was one thing I was going to ask you as well. I'd done the Therapy record and it was done well, and things I was offered after that was 3-piece Irish rock bands.
Okay.
Right? And I made a conscious decision to not do that. Have you done that?
Oh yeah, big time. Just when everybody thinks, oh, Nick Cave, Polly Harvey, oh, let's do a Depeche Mode or Nights Ebb, or there's dance records.
So I think it's important to do that.
There was a period of time where I was trying to sort of match the two things together, because I hated the fact that synths were always considered very sterile, and people who played in bands couldn't have synth. They go, oh no, we're not having that. That's not a real instrument. And you're just going, no. So Octon Baby, Violator, they're probably the best exponents of that sort of mishmash.
Yeah. And do you think, because Tim and I were talking about this as well, do you think that there's a negative impact as well as a positive impact? So that when you've had that breakthrough and it's all starting to happen. I don't know whether your head can be turned, or you think, well, I better do a ton more Erasure records.
I think that's inevitable, and I think that's how you grow as a person. Because it's not the good times that define you; it's how you deal with the bad times. So, I could fast forward to another U2 record, which was very different, or another Depeche Mode record that was very different, and how you deal with those for yourself. As a producer, you can become like a little bit oblivious to other people, and you have to keep your feet on the ground. In this day and age, I just saw the Kate Nash documentary.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
It starts off and I go, but by the end, it's really good, and it brings home the sadness of how little pastoral care there is in this business.
Because she rocketed up, didn't she? I mean, it was like, bam, there you are. She was in LA for a while.
Yeah, she went backwards and forwards. She had a terrible thing with her manager, who basically comes in and goes, "Yeah, I'm going to save the day," and then was basically taking everything.
This is in America? Or?
Yeah, in America. So she had to sell her home. Oh, it was terrible. But it comes across, it's not trying to be a feel-good thing, but the thing I got from it was how there's nobody to turn to. And in the studio, you're sort of okay, there's a little bit of a setup there. But as artists,
and everybody wants you to do everything all the time.
Well, that's what the business is all about.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll be controversial, Mr. Looting Grange. You just have to watch that documentary, Amy. And, I get so many calls. Can you work with so-and-so? Because they're difficult.
Right.
Do you think you're seen as that to people that you work with? Tricky artists?
I do. I sort of don't want to, but they seem to find me, and I find them.
Yeah. Well, you also feel comfortable working with people who perhaps want to either explore a darker side, or they are.
Yeah, well, but I'm also very aware that sometimes you have to be dad, sometimes you have to be the headmaster, and you've also got a load of idiots going, "Oh, where's our amazing smash hit coming in?" And we want it done at a tenth of the price.
As a producer, you're at some point you're having to try and please everybody. You've got the artist, who's the most important person. You're trying to visualise their dream and realise it, and at the same time you've got a manager who's sort of freaking out because he wants to make some dough, and then you've got the record company who've got to sell it.
Yeah.
Oh, it's very,
it's really tricky, isn't it?
Yeah.
And there's sometimes when it's great, when your A&R guy, Nigel Grange, was a wonderful guy who had Ensign Records, who I did. Funnily enough, there was a small connection actually for us here, that I did a band called Into Paradise, who were produced by Adrian Borland, who was the singer in The Sound.
And
oh my God, The Sound.
The Sound, yeah.
And he
so sad.
unfortunately, and it was not long after the Into Paradise album that he had started producing it. I came on board because he was starting to get a little wiggy by then, as he did. I mean, he had terrible depression, and I sort of took over the album and finished it off.
Yeah.
But Nigel Grange was that classic A&R guy, and who was just, I guess, like Daniel maybe. Just, it's going to be great. And I did Blue Aeroplanes for him and these sort of bands, who I loved, and he was just make the records, stick it out, you know.
I was going to ask about something else with the whole A&R, listening to albums and so on. The amount of times I've heard over the years of A&R people coming in and listening to a completed album, which we now know and love. The one I heard the other day was Kick by NXS. Apparently the record company heard that, which is broadly speaking as we know it now, and they all just said, this is awful, we can't put this out. can you make another one? This is not happening. And they all sort of stuck to their guns, and then it became what it is. So it's just, sometimes there's just no rhyme or reason to it.
Yeah,
it's very difficult because the label are putting up the money.
Yeah.
Occasionally you get somebody who does know a bit.
Yeah.
And also they're not involved on a day-to-day basis with the creative process.
Yeah.
So one of the hardest things to do is, I'm just doing a new record. Can you come in and have a listen to it? You must have been in that situation.
Yeah, of course.
And you going, I hate this. How am I going to say this? I really like these people.
Yes.
So they've got to be in that position and have authority.
Yeah.
It also draws in a lot of people who are stupid. It's historically now, there's a big dividing line. I hate people from labels coming in.
Yes.
Because they'll disrupt that.
It's such a vibe killer, isn't
Totally.
it?
That's why I say no single. Don't mention the word single. Because that'll kill the track.
Yeah.
What happened?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I know.
Yeah, it's a funny thing. I used to do a lot of work at residential studios, and there'd always be the time when the label guy comes down.
Yeah.
To
and
stay as well.
the day's over.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Because, but you know what it's like when you're working with a band, particularly. I mean, you two have just done it, and you become this little bubble, don't you?
Yeah.
And the rest of the world doesn't really matter anymore.
Yeah.
And if you're in a residential studio where you're not even leaving at the end of the night, even more so.
Yeah.
And you know, everyone gets their thing. It's like, this guy always eats his cornflakes while we're doing
Right.
or whatever it is.
Right.
And then the label guy comes down, and it's fine. You know, he's probably a super nice guy, but that doesn't matter. It's changed.
Yeah.
And there have been times when I've been doing, and I said, you know what? As soon as he's gone, I said, right, let's go to the pub. Let's do something else.
Totally.
There's no point working today.
Yeah.
And it's not because I don't like the bloke
Sure.
or whatever, but it's going to take us another day to get back into our It's changed. And I'm a great believer in that thing of you know, if you're not feeling it today, I'm not going to spend all day doing that.
Oh yeah, Vince Clarke regularly.
Yeah.
Let's stop Flood.
Yeah.
You can't do that. Yes, I can. I'm paying for it. Ultimately.
But it's important. It's important. You
Yeah.
just say, you know, well, fuck it. Let's not do the guitar today. Let's do something else.
Totally. How many hours have you wasted sitting there until 1, 3 in the morning?
Yeah.
And go, please, can we just go home?
Yeah.
And also, there's like, I remember when we were doing Resurgam, we were working on a certain track, and it was actually the one that people were talking about being a single, which was the sort of fatal thing about it. And we'd made a version of it, and we all listened to it, and all the parts were in the right place, but there was just something wrong.
Yeah.
It just sounded, well, for one thing, it just sounded like not Fink, you know. It sounded like we were trying to make a
I can even remember how it went.
like a Coldplay record or something.
Oh.
And so anyway, one of our management team came down and heard it, and she was sort of thinking, "This is brilliant! This is absolutely brilliant!" And she went away. Then we all decided in the interim we didn't like this version. 2 weeks later, we recorded. We threw the rule book out, and we recorded this completely different, slightly weird version.
Yeah.
And we were bouncing around the room saying, "This is incredible. This is the version," you know. And then the same management girl came back later on that day, and we were like, "You'll never guess. We've got to play you this version." Sat her down, and she went, "I don't like it as much as the previous version," and we were just so deflated. But we still knew that we liked it. But you know, but that's the thing. Had she been there throughout the process of making this new version, she might have felt slightly.
And this is why the label sometimes are really important.
Yeah.
Because you know, you hear it through their ears.
Yeah.
So if there's a problem, it's suddenly huge. And now I can sit with my back to the room. And if somebody new is in the room, you're going, it's wrong. Okay, fine. You can go now.
Yeah.
But how many times have you done that? I don't know. I have. I'm sure you have. Where you finish mixing, you think, yeah, it's cooking. As soon as the band walk in, you go, it's shit.
Yeah.
You know, it's all wrong, and there's all these things you suddenly.
Yeah, I'll tell you. But that's when your ego is taken over. I mean, mixing has to be removal of ego. As soon as you want that up loud or want that out, it's just like it's ego.
Yeah.
So you have to throw that away.
It's an interesting process, isn't it? And the one thing I miss, because I do a lot of mixing on my own, because it's just the way things are now.
I can't do that.
I love it when bands come down, because you're right about the ego thing, because there would be times when you'd be thinking, no, fucking hell, this is right. And they'll go, yeah, we really want to do it like this. And you do it and you go, fucking hell, they're right.
Yeah, totally.
Fucking right. I hate this. But it's true, because you do have to check yourself and you think, drums sounding cookie and it's all sounding really good. And that's because you're going through the motions, or it's standard A. But what you really want is somebody come along and go, but I want to do that. And you go, oh yeah, that's great now.
I sometimes wonder if, for me, that's the engineer. His ego is trying to push through.
Yeah. I think you're right, because sort of fundamentally when we were originally trained, it was to make things sound
amazing,
good and amazing or and acceptable to everybody. But well, it is, isn't it? That thing. And then, but what you really want is somebody along to go, well, acceptable is one thing. However, and boom,
It's funny, because Arcton Baby is my version of an acceptable sound.
Okay.
Because I can't do an acceptable sound. But you're trained to have the conservative option. So there's 3 mics, and then there's the one on the snare drum that's going into the EQ that's distorted into oblivion.
Yeah.
That goes into a mono reverb.
Yeah.
I wanted to just ask you about when you were mentioning Acton Baby. That obviously now, because U2, they're such a famous band, and everyone who knows pretty much anything about music knows that the story with them, broadly speaking, is Joshua Tree, massive album, Rattle and Hum. Everyone's getting a bit kind of like, this is getting a bit tired and weird, and they're doing this weird American thing and so on. And then they do the big reinvention.
Yeah.
So when you were recording Acton Baby, were you conscious of them trying to do the big
it was
reinvention?
day one.
Really?
Day one. Can't have it like this.
Okay.
It's got to be different.
Right.
So record tracks that in the classic U2 way, and then go, no, hate it.
Okay.
And generally Eno would come in,
Yeah.
and be around for 2 weeks, turn everything on its head, and then go.
Right.
And then Dan Lanois would come in with his broom, going, all right, we've got some lyrics,
okay.
have you got
Yeah.
this sort of thing.
And that was Berlin, wasn't it?
That was Berlin for about 3 months, and we had 1 backing track in 3 months.
Okay. Right.
It was pretty hairy,
Mm.
very, very dark. And then they went, this isn't working. Let's just do it in a house on the sea, just outside Dublin.
Okay.
So that's where all of it was cut, apart from one and Mysterious Ways bass.
Really? So it's a myth that it's the Berlin album in a way. Okay. In the same way that it's a myth that Low is a Berlin album.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
But
an art.
just the opposite way around.
Yeah. It's just art at its finest.
Right.
Because Eno said on that one, Barry would be in one room, he'd be in the other, and they'd just do a bit of music and then hand it to the other one and just make it up as they go along.
Yeah. You did pop as well.
Yeah.
But that's a very different kettle of fish, isn't it? Because there's... Right. That does not prompt happy faces. Yeah.
Yes. That would be the answer to your negative question.
Okay. Yeah.
I need say no more.
Okay, fair enough. I remember hearing that Bono was completing the lead vocal take to one of the songs at sort of 3 a.m. when the album was being sent off to mastering it.
No, in the mastering room.
So he did it in the mastering
Yeah.
room.
We camped out in mastering for a week.
Oh my god.
Christ.
No. I'm not going back there. I refuse. No.
Yeah. The question about the hit single, because I've asked the bands about that as well, and you get some wildly different answers. You know, people saying, "I would never set out to record a hit." Funnily enough, when I mentioned This Is the Kit, they recorded with John Parrish, their last album. Yeah.
He's not out for the single.
Right, exactly. And yeah, I mean, she just said, Kate just said, "No, I just don't see why we would want to do that. Even like why we'd want to have a hit single as well.
Yeah.
Because, and she's quite philosophical, saying if we don't continue sort of making enough money to do this, I'll just do something else.
Believe you me, it'd be brilliant to have a few times where things paid a bit more.
Yeah.
It's like that whole thing we had about how much would you take to work with a band that you didn't want to work with?
Oh, yes.
That's an interesting question, because I've always wondered, because I know that Steve Albini did a couple of albums. He did one with they were a British band actually, Bush, and he did one with Robert Plant, and he actually said to the guys in Bush, I don't like your band, I have no interest, but I'll take the money and I'll make a record for you. And I find that really. I mean, he's a curious character,
yes,
in so much that he when he was doing even bands like the Jesus Lizard, he would just say, "No, I'm not producing." And I know that at a certain point they went, either get involved or don't.
But he's famous for the kind of starting people off on the wrong foot.
I don't know about you, but I have been in positions, and it's always the biggest mistake ever. And when there have been records that people said, "Oh, do you fancy doing this?" And you're thinking, "I really did." And people go, "You really should." I'm going, "I really don't think I should." And eventually you go, "Oh, all right then, I'll do it." And immediately this was a terrible mistake.
It's the worst thing you can do.
Have you ever kind of walked from a project subsequently? I think I remember you saying that you thought about leaving the first Nick Cave record when things were or one of them anyway.
It would have been the first one because I just hadn't had.
One experienced enough, do you think? Or?
I was 23, and Nick was ODing back of the session, and the way that they treated me when they were totally out of it, I just didn't have the equipment to deal with it, and it was a big ask. But you find your stability and you find the things that will get you through it, and you realise that their defensiveness or their aggression is just covering up their insecurities.
Which is always the way.
Yeah.
Because people can't process it and deal with it. And
No.
There were some horrible times in studios where people, and it's thankfully it seems to be gone now, but there was a time in the sort of the 70s and 80s where assistants and T-boys were just treated like shit.
Oh yeah, Lily White told me once that he started Polydor, and as the assistant, he was in a box that was 3 foot down, and he'd have to sit there, and there's a little window, and he was not allowed to speak. He just operated the tape machine. He said he once went 18 hours without a piss. Please.
Oh my god!
I mean, it's like the youngest person in the room has got an opinion that needs to be heard.
Yeah, and more often than not, it's probably
It's
a
the right
valid
one.
opinion.
Yeah, totally.
Because they are the young.
Yeah, totally.
Well, I think that's
Yeah, I think
everything. That's fantastic. Thank you
great.
so much.
You're very welcome. I mean, I feel like we've
scratched the surface.
Yeah,
I
I know.
feel,
So there you go. Thanks to Flood for having us over to his studio. There's so much to talk about with him. Who knows? Maybe he'll be back for another episode one day. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. Don't forget to subscribe. See you next time.